Now,
Yep.
there it's recording. Okay, this is Mr. Peter Marshall. Peter's directed television, movies. He's worked as a first AD on feature films. He's done everything from producing. He's done scores of stuff. He and I together have done 30-some hours of talk on my show, Rex Sikes Movie Beat, regarding directing, and we're still not done with our director series.
No.
We're not, and we did.
I don't think we'll ever get done that one. Right?
We're going to keep going forever because there's just more to cover. And then we did a 5 or 6 hour part on First AD. And Peter's got some fabulous products for directors, for First ADs, on scheduling and breakdown, all the stuff that we're going to be talking about today, and much, much more. Obviously, much, much more, because we're not talking directing primarily today. We're talking about scheduling and breakdown. Wave, and of course, put your hands up if you're okay with being videotaped. This goes out on the internet. Peter, it's great to have you here. And I kind of want to do it this way. You sent out material. Hopefully they've looked at it. They have questions. But I want to kind of give you the floor in terms of what a first AD does and why they get paid to do what they do, and how that can intersect with the line producer who's also going to maybe do a budget or a schedule. And then really get into nuts and bolts so that they can so that they can get out their markers and they can start breaking down their screenplays and schedule. Not too much to ask in an hour, is it?
No, never with you, Rex.
Okay.
How many people in the class? I only see like 5.
There's a 14, I think, class, and then this gets out on my Rex Sikes Movie Beat channel, so it goes to the world. So.
Okay. Great. All right. Well, this is really cool. Well, good morning. It's still a little dark here, so I have all my lights on and on the West Coast. So again, I think I'll just sort of start off, and I did send. I'm going to use this little paper that I sent everybody as a guide. But let me just give you a little bit of a breakdown of what Rex talked about. Basically, the first AD is really a pivotal position on any movie. I sort of equate them to the hub of a wheel. All right, so we know what there's the wheel and the spokes, and then there's the middle part, which is the hub. And I think really for me that's where the AD fits in. That everything focuses in on that, and then all those spokes are everything that goes out to get the production done. The first AD is very central and critical to any kind of movie, whether it's a short film or a major motion picture. It really doesn't matter. And they're basically there for breaking down the script into a schedule. Ultimately, the first AD in prep is responsible for, and we'll go over some of that, and you do have a lot on your paper, but essentially, what scene do we shoot first on day one, and how long is it going to take? That's ultimately what you're doing for prep. And then if you divide the second half of the AD's job is basically on the set, which is running the set. So it's the one, that's sort of like the sergeant major, I guess, is a good idea of what the AD is. And they basically make sure everything is organized. They run the set through the blocking, rehearsal stage, organizing extras. And then you have an AD department, because you can't just do it all on your own. I mean, there's a second AD, a third AD, usually a trainee AD or a second. And each of those people in your AD department have certain positions. So the first AD, again, in prep, basically breaks down the schedule, goes on location scouts with the director, basically organizes the shooting schedule. The second AD in prep basically organizes all the meetings and puts together shooting schedule and also the call sheets, which are given out to the crew every night. That's her main job. What scenes do we do tomorrow? What time is our call? That's the second AD's job. The third AD, or in Canada it's a third AD, in the States it's usually a second. They're responsible for staying back at the trailers, working with actors, through hair and makeup. And then you have either PAs or trainee ADs that just work on the set and help you out. So that's sort of your team. And like anything in the film business, it's a very collaborative effort. So you can't do it all by yourself. So that's essentially, in a nutshell, what the first AD does. So the key to all of this, just like I think Rex has probably been talking to you about anything else, whether it's actors prep, directors prep, AD, it's the key word is prep. and that you have to do your prep, and it starts there. And what you're doing is, with short films or whatever you're working on, it still starts with the prep. So from an AD's point of view, you have a script, and you read that script, and then you have to break it down into all of its elements. A director breaks a script down into elements, but he breaks it into shot lists and character objectives and scene objectives. It's more on the creative side, where the first AD basically will take care of the logistics, if you want to think about that. It's funny. I actually was just in China, in Shanghai for 7 weeks teaching. And they have the Chinese have a coin. It's a 1 yuan coin, and there's a 1 on the front and a flower on the back. And I realized when I was teaching that was a perfect example of sort of the 1 equals budget and scheduling, and the flower equals the creative. So if you think of a coin, it's like the AD is on one side of the coin and the director's on the other side of the coin. The coin has to have 2 sides, and I think that's a really good a concept of what an AD does in the relationship to the director as well. Just so I know, Rex, when you say they're films, what do you? I'd just like to hear from the group a second. So what do we do? Are you doing short films? What's happening here? Just so I get a better idea.
I'm going to let them quickly answer, but these are sophomore, junior, and senior students. Some have done films in the past, and some are working currently on films. We're doing tiny projects in this class, but they have other film classes where they have projects. So if you want to, in 10 seconds or less, kind of describe what you're doing, Stephen, go ahead.
Documentary.
Stephen's doing a documentary where he's interviewing people regarding an important topic.
Okay, so documentaries, again, I spent 10 years doing documentaries when I first graduated from film school. But the same process applies. You're not doing the drama part of it, but you're still in prep. And so everything you're learning here is about organizing, and all of that still works very well for documentaries. So who else is doing documentaries?
Anyone else? No? Who's doing short narratives? Everybody. Everyone else is doing short narratives. Who's attempting a feature? Who's done a feature? One attempting or has done? Attempting. Should say succeeding at attempting.
Yes, succeeding at attempting, for
succeeding at doing a feature. All right, so that's the gamut.
Okay, great. All right. So I think at this point, I just maybe just like to take any questions, and then we can get into the nuts and bolts. We don't have a lot of time, but is there any specific questions from at least based on what your film is, on what sort of the things that you would like to know? I mean, we have a piece of paper here I've sent you. We can go over that, but it's like this is a live broadcast that maybe I can answer some of the questions initially, and then we can just take it from there.
Stephen.
What's the best way to get an impactful interview?
Best way to get an impactful interview is okay.
The best place or the best
way?
The best. Okay. Well, first of all, to do all your research that you can on a subject, and to find out as much as you can about the subject, and do your pre-interviews. And pre-interviews are really important for documentary, where you can meet the people, find the location where you're going to shoot, settle in, find out about the person as a person, and then just maybe ask some preliminary questions, get a sense of, are they going to be nervous? Are they going to be hesitant? Some of the questions. So it's really, I think, and then everybody's style is different. So, but I think that's a really key aspect of getting good interviews is your pre-interviews, all the work you do in prep.
Awesome. Anyone else? And anything related to scheduling and budgeting or not budgeting, but scheduling and breakdown that you want to know from the handout or from your project? Yeah, Grant.
I was just wondering, because prep, it's eliminating as many factors as possible when you get into production, knowing what can go wrong so you can anticipate it and then do that. But then I'm wondering what the line is between prep and then adapting to what would come up in production. Like, you have a schedule, and for unforeseen circumstances, that schedule has to change. How flexible is that?
Well, the flexibility is based on you, your budget, and of course we all know Mr. Murphy, and Murphy's Law was written for the film industry. I don't care what anybody says, it was written for the film industry. Rex and I know about this, so Murphy's going to come and bite you all the time. So understanding that things are going to change or happen, filmmaking is what I call a lot of moving pieces in making any kind of film, and so anything that has a lot of moving pieces to it will have a subject to break down. And so it's somebody forgets to call an actor, or the subway shuts down and somebody's late. Something happens. There's a piece of equipment is missed when you pick it up. There's all of these things happen. So your contingency plan is very important, and that's why you also have to hire or get all the best people with you, and so that each of these people in their areas can really help you and support you on that. So the answer to the question is really, how prepared are you? How much knowledge do you have on what you're doing? And have backups. We always do. I teach a lot at the Vancouver Film School here, so I've been involved over about 6-7 years with over 350 short films in some capacity. So I certainly understand what people are going through when they do it. I can see it, and I can see sort of a top level now where these are the things that are going to happen. So we always have backups. You know, if you're casting, you have 3 cast members. What happens if one cast member is sick? Because you're doing short films, you may not, or indie films that you may not be able to pay people. What happens if someone gets a job and they have to go? Who's your backup? Things like that. What about locations? We always talk about the difference between wants and needs. So you want in your script a big mansion somewhere, but at the end you're just going to get a small apartment, which happens to be yours, because needs and wants. Or the same with a car or vehicle. Determine what you need, and then determine what you want, and then determine what you need. Also, something that I always say when I teach is the audience doesn't know that you wanted the mansion. They're seeing the apartment. And when they see it on the screen or on your computer or wherever they're watching it, they're involved in your story. So I think unless you're doing a second remake of the Titanic and you're on a rowboat, okay, that might not work. But the idea is to always sort of have these backups, and that assume that for me, it's the story first, performance second. And then all this other stuff, cameras and wardrobe and locations, that's all third. So it has to start that way.
Excellent, excellent. And also your job as a first AD, when something does arise and there is a scheduling issue, whether it's a day out of days or whether you can't get the cars that you needed or something, then you primarily are responsible for coordinating with the other departments and the producers and going and working together with people to resolve this.
Yeah, it's called the AD shuffle, or the schedule shuffle. And you set out to make a plan. You go through the process in prep where everyone is out, location scouting. You have all these meetings that you go through, and as the first AD's job, you're with the director and the producers, the production designer. You're going to locations. You're getting an idea of how the director wants to break his script down or her script. You start inputting that into your schedule, or however you want to do a schedule, to create what are we shooting first. And there's lots of factors involved. And it's like, do you shoot the outside scenes first and then go inside? Like, there's all these factors that happen. Each film is unique to its own circumstances. So you can always just speak in general terms, but you want to find, but as you go through all that process, you are beginning to hone in the schedule. Sort of, okay, how many days do you have? I mean, you start with the money, right? Show me the money. So do you have 3 days to shoot, 30 days to shoot? How many days do you shoot? You divide you know, let's just say, sake of argument, round numbers, it's still early over here in Vancouver. So let's say you have 10 pages and you have, you know, 2 to 3 days, 3 days to shoot. So you have almost 3 pages a day, 3 and a bit pages a day to shoot, right? Or, you know, 5 days, 10 pages, whatever it is, 20 pages, 5 days, that means you have 4 pages a day. You start there, start with the math, right? It's actually logical in a sense. So if you have a 20-page script and you have 5 days to shoot it, then technically you have 4 pages a day to shoot. That makes up for it. But that's not quite true, because what happens if you have a big stunt action sequence or a big ballroom dancing sequence? So that sequence, say, is 2 pages, that's going to take a day. So you still have 5 days, but then you have to find more time. So maybe one of these days is going to be a 6 days or 6-page day to make up for it.
Can I just interrupt to say, you know, typically when you break down the script and you break into eighths of a page, your famous example of the 1/8 of a page thing, and the army came over the hill. It's a tiny line in the script, but could take a month to shoot.
Right.
So,
yeah, I think that sort of came from the Russian version of War and Peace, which was 8 hours long. And I think there was 1/8 of a page that said French army comes over the hill. It was 1/8 of a page, and I think it took a week to shoot it. So it's technically not the page count itself. It's the amount of work that's involved in that.
and so, as you gain experience as filmmakers, and Peter's experience as a first AD and as a director, as a grip, as doing all the different hats, when it comes to how much time is required to shoot something, he can best guesstimate it based on his 40 years of experience, and then still things will come up or things will be, you know. Have you a rule of thumb for, I have a scene, how long a standard, say, 2-person scene should take to shoot with 5 setups? I mean,
well, I think again, you have to understand. I hope everybody understands this. That this is a very general comment, because it's all based on the complication of the scene. So if you look at 2 pages with 2 people talking, 5 to 7 shots, just do the math and figure and sit down and really think logically about, well, how long does it take actually to set up a shot, to do a master shot, to light it? Is it an hour? Is it 45 minutes? How long is it to actually move the camera around and get an over-shoulder shot and then get a close-up? This comes with experience. So I can say 2 hours, I could say 6 hours. It depends on you. It depends on your crew. This business is also what I call it's the weakest link in the chain too. So whatever the weakest link is, and that could be you, by the way, as a director, it could be your dolly grip. In other words, if you have a very elaborate shot to do as a oneer or whatever in a master, but you don't either have the right equipment to do it, or you have a focus puller like a first assistant camera, or a dolly grip that's not really experienced and it's out of focus every time you do it, or the dolly bumps, you have to change your shot. You see, so it's all relative to the people you get as well. It is a total collaborative effort, and that's I guess the concept of doing very independent movies or movies with not experienced people. You take the lumps that way. So if you want, as a director, I want to do the Goodfellas Steadicam shot where I start outside and walk all the way through the restaurant. Well, that's fine, but you have someone who's capable of lighting that and shooting that, and you have all the extras that can hit their marks on time. Because when you do something like that, one thing goes wrong, you start all over again. So my advice always is keep it simple at the beginning and tell the story. I know this is sort of, and this is still an AD thing, because it's like, what's your story about? What are the performances about? That's why we go watch the movie, and keep everything simple, so that as a director, you also don't not just shoot the script. You have to shoot the schedule, and I think that people don't really understand that once you have a script and it's 10 pages and it's scene 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever it is, and you break your script down as a director, when the AD gets it, they turn all that around and we're going to start on it's going to be scene 3, then scene 7, then scene 2. You have to take your mind and put it into the shooting order. And that's the prep. You have your overall prep, overall idea of arcs and character arcs and shots as a director for your shot list. And then once you get the shooting schedule, take your shot list and change it all into the shooting order, because now everybody's working on shooting order. If you have a 5-day show and scene 7 is on the last day, no one's going to care about scene 7 right away. Costumes, wardrobe, no, everybody's concerned about what's the first scene we're doing on day 1, and that's how you have to focus. I've always said, in my 40 years, as Rex has said, I've survived with no ulcers, thank God. But I've always, my mantra is get to lunch, get to wrap. You know, get to lunch, get to wrap. And day 2, next day, I'll worry about that maybe in the afternoon of day 1. But it's like there's so much stuff coming down on you. So whether you're the director and the AD and the director of photography, those are the 3 main positions on any shoot. It's just always are people asking you questions. And from an AD's point of view, it's really focusing on taking the pressure off the director and the DP and really working with the schedule. And I guess coming around, this is very a long answer, is that one of the things that's really important is get on any set you can and just watch, observe, or if your friend's directing, you're gripping, whatever, because you pick up an energy of the set. You learn from the sets. And as Rex intimated just a little while ago, he said, I've picked all this information up over all these 30, 40 years of working. And I can reel off stuff now, but when I'm on the set, that's when I think of something, because it's just a natural thing at that point. If you don't get on sets, if you're not working on any sets, you don't pick this up. And you start to see things like how grip does something, or an AD does something else, and how to do things. You know, when the S hits the fan, you've got to do something. The show must go on. I told the story to Rex, but I was a first AD a long time ago in a big TV series called Wise Guy. And we all showed up at 7 o'clock in the morning to do a shoot in this building. And there was the director and the director of photography and myself as the first AD sort of stood across the street watching the building we were going to shoot in burning down. And there was a fire overnight, and all our work trucks were there, the equipment was all there, and we sort of went, well, okay, now what are we going to do? Well, within an hour and a half, we were shooting, and we were on the line to the producers in LA. We were changing things, people to change the script, we'll redo this scene. We worked with the police. They said, okay, you could, and we did a scene outside, okay? The show has to go on. And I think in Rex's experience and my experience, if you put both of us together, oh God, that's too long. We don't want to talk about how many years that is. But I don't think I've ever worked. I've worked on a couple of shows where we went down in prep. Like in prep, it just went down. But when I was shooting, somehow it all happened. I don't know. I don't know how it did, but the show got done. And I think you always have to keep that in the back of your mind.
You really have to go back, if you're serious film students, and listen to the 30 hours with Peter and the 5 other hours. He's got so many great stories about big movies and TV shows that you'd recognize and things that he's done. You really need to listen. Awesome, Peter. A couple of things that what you said. I've taken some notes that I'd like to kind of address. You said you have to shoot the schedule. And your job as first AD is get to lunch, get to wrap. Now, part of that is because there's so many things, there's so many departments, there's so much stuff that's being coordinated. You have to segment your day. So get to lunch, that's the first half of the day, and then get to the wrap time. You know, what are those things that you have to do in between? But shooting the schedule, because if you're working on somebody else's money, somebody's paying you to make a movie, you're hired as a director, or producer, or AD, or whatever you're working, then let's talk to the directors a little bit about shooting the schedule. They can't just wantonly decide, I'm going to do 50 takes here. Can we talk about, even in this digital age, the necessity of sometimes disciplining oneself to work with a shot ratio, even though we don't have to buy our film anymore? The advantage of learning how to shoot to the schedule.
I think Rex made a really good point here. We're come from the film generation, but that's not even the issue here. That's just processing. If it's film, it's buying film and processing film. If it's digital, it's just a little card. It's not the film. It's the amount of time it takes to light and shoot a scene. So whether you're shooting on Panavision camera or your iPhone, it's still the length of time it takes to block the scene first, light it, and shoot it, and do several takes. So that's not going to change. And I think that, so the concept is then if you do the math, and if everybody says do the math, then what's the math? Take your page count. And this is very simple. Just take how many days do you have to shoot? How many pages do you have to shoot? Right? That's the math. This is what your due diligence as a director, this is what the AD does as well. And then figure out, okay, so if I've got to do scene 5 and scene 7 on day 1, and that's 4 or 5 pages, it's not the page count, it's how many setups are in each of those days. So you have to really look at that. So if you're thinking that you can get 15 setups a day average, and you've got, or your DP and your AD tell you, so I think we can only do maybe 15 setups here in the day because of whatever reason, and you walk in with 25 shots on your shot list, you're 10 shots over. Now, maybe you can get 20, but you have to be realistic, and you have to be able to say, how long is it going to take? That doesn't happen. That's an experience, but also every crew's different. Every time you walk on a set. So what I've done is, through the Vancouver Film School, all these over 300 films, and all the films that I was involved with when I was in Shanghai, basically 15 to 20 shots are what very inexperienced crews, student films, that's what they're getting. I mean, this is a really general average, believe me, okay? I mean, some are getting 30 and some got 10, okay? But if you average out, write down a number of 15 to 20 and say, you know what, I think that's a pretty good average to get on a day when you only have maybe 8 people on a crew. Maybe your actors aren't as experienced, you're not as experienced. So if you use that as math, and just start there. And you're only going to know when you start shooting. But the key thing is to, cut your shots as much as you can. We have an expression in the business, it's Titanic in the morning and reality TV in the afternoon. And basically, what that is you're going to go in the morning because you have 12 hours ahead of you, and it takes 2 hours to get your first shot because everybody's in, and then your lighting masters and all of that. And then after lunch, all of a sudden you look at your shot list and you've only got done 1/3 of it. And so then you're scrambling. This happens to everybody. Spielberg, Luke, everybody. It's always about the time that you have, all right? So I think if a really good piece of advice is always think when you walk in that in the afternoon you're going to have to cut shots. If you know that, then why don't you start earlier and think about it in prep, or think about how to do your shots. And then also working with your assistant director and your DP as a director, you learn how to save time. By, instead of having the actors get up, for example, and walk around the blocking and go all the way from one side and all the way around the set, and you're trying to have to shoot all this, maybe you can sort of keep a fourth wall and say, can we just sort of not have to look this way? That could save 45 minutes. And how do you block a scene? And ADs and DP, directors of photography, work with directors to make suggestions like that. If it's about time, you ultimately, as a director, it's your choice. Right? The AD just basically says, this is what, in my experience, we're looking at. When I first broke down schedules on movies, I usually come in and I have about a week by myself to break down schedule. And I always say, well, how many days do you have for the show? And they'll say 35, 40, 45, whatever it is. And then I'll work for 3 or 4 days. And I'll come back and say, do you want me to give you a 40-day schedule, or do you want me to give you a schedule that I think actually works? There's 2 different things here, because somebody, and Rex knows this, somebody in LA or New York or wherever it says, 35 days, because the last movie you did took 35 days. And so where do these numbers come from? I still can't figure that out. But you just do the math. And I think that as you work through your films, if you understand logistics, like shooting outside versus shooting inside, what can go faster, I mean, the thing today with the digital cameras and everything that, shooting outside at night, it's almost a no-brainer with no lights now. But 15 years ago, we couldn't do that with film. You needed big lights and cranes and all of that. Now it's like, okay. I mean, you still want to do that in bigger movies because you get the light, but you can shoot a 2-page walk and talk down a scene with no lights now downtown if you have all the lights. So that's what digital has done for us. And also shooting 4K. I've shot 4 short films myself, directed, and I'm a big fan of 4K because you can bump in editing to get a close-up where you didn't have a close-up. So the technology is certainly helping.
And that speeds it up. And I think it's practical to set good habits when you start. If you just go out and you just say, okay, let's shoot, you shoot, and then you edit all this footage, and you've blown past your days, and everybody's tired and angry and mad, it would be better to start off doing the math, as Peter says, figuring out what your shots are, and seeing if you can get in and get it accomplished within that number. And you may have to adjust, but that's where you get feedback. But learn to have good habits when it comes to shooting, and of course your rapport skills and your relational skills to work with the DP and the first AD and the director and all these different people. Because when you're on set and there's a lot of pressure, especially in that afternoon, and tempers start to flare, you got to know how to work with people.
Right. I think also, like, we're talking scheduling here, but you have to. We're all of a sudden we're talking, from an AD, but then we're talking directing, and then we're talking performance, because it's all intertwined. I mean, it is all that. And that if you can have the best schedule and the best director and best DP, but if all of a sudden, for example, talking about weakest link, if one of your actors is not up, keeps dropping lines, then what are you going to do? You have to always think about those kind of things, because those are going to happen. A word of advice is always hire people who know more than you do. This is unfortunately a very egotistical business, and so people don't want to do that. But if you're a director, because I'm speaking to directors here, and also producers, is hire these people that know a lot about their job, and get 2 or 3 of them on your set at least, a DP and an AD for sure. Natalie Portman, I think we all know Natalie Portman, the actress, said something a couple of years ago, and she said, all things being equal, and she said, she speaks on behalf of a lot of actors, and she said, all things being equal, you'd want a director that knows what they're doing with lots of experience, and you want a first AD that knows what they're doing with a lot of experience. But she said, if things change, she said herself and a lot of the A-list actors and any actor basically would take an experienced first AD and have an inexperienced director, because they can always work with the inexperienced director, right? And because they can direct their director proof themselves, or they can work that out. But if you don't have an experienced AD on the set, the whole thing just implodes, and the tension rises, and things are confusing, and everybody gets stressed out. So I thought that was a very interesting piece from somebody who should know what they're talking about, who's been on movie sets since she was like 10 or 11. And that's really a consensus when we talk about the first AD's role. And that the role of first AD is a huge impact on everything, because you're ultimately, in one sense, responsible for like literally millions and millions of dollars, because when you're doing the big movies like I've been involved with, every hour is thousands of dollars, $10,000s, whatever, depends on the budget. And if you go over by half an hour, if you go over by, what happens if you have a day, what happens if things change? The money just starts pouring out. And I think that the 2 people that get fired first in any movie are the director of photography and the first AD if they're behind schedule, because they're the timekeepers. Whether it's your job, whether it's your fault or not, that's irrelevant, right? Because you're the timekeepers. How much time do we have to do this? And you have to figure that out.
Excellent. Any questions? It's Alex.
Hi, my name is Alex. I had a question. I'm doing a prep work for a short film that I'm going to be working on, and I'm currently getting the crew and a time set to shoot. If the sequence that I want to shoot becomes too elaborate before the shoot starts, is there a situation that comes up where you have to simplify the story for that scene for that story first before the shoot happens? Has that ever occurred?
The first part of your conversation, when I went like this, the video froze, and so I didn't hear what you said. If you could just repeat it quickly.
Oh, sure, sorry. I'm preparing to set up an elaborate sequence for my short film, but if the sequence itself becomes too elaborate, would I need to simplify the story first before the shoot occurs?
So the idea is, sorry, I sort of don't know what the question is.
Here, I think, can I take a stab?
Yeah, sure.
Because
Sorry, the video's cutting in and out a bit.
I'm closer to the microphone, too.
There you go.
It seems that Alex has said he's got an elaborate setup for a shot that he wants to do, but if it gets too out of hand in the preparation stage, can he then revamp the story or something to make it more manageable? Is that fair?
Yeah.
Did you hear that question? No? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Skype.
No?
That
Me
question
either.
should never be asked.
Let's make sure that everything is here.
Okay.
Now you're back.
What's that? Yeah.
That must have been-
The video froze again, so I still don't know. I think I got sort of.
Here, I'll say it again. I'll try and do it. Alex is shooting. He's got an elaborate scene, set up for a scene, and he said if in preparation it gets too elaborate or unmanageable, can he then go in and revamp the story or revamp his shot before getting to production?
Oh, the answer is yes, and then yes, and then yes. If you're the director with the producer, the director, the AD, figure out what your story is. Do you need an elaborate shot? That's what we're doing. It's visual storytelling. And then if you figure out in prep, because prep is the magic time. That's where you spend a quarter in prep, but you spend $1 for everything when you shoot, right? So it's like, think about it and get your idea with your AD and your director of photography, and maybe it's your actors, maybe you can't pull it off. Maybe your lighting, your DP can't light it the way you want it to. Yes, figure it all out in prep as much as possible. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say that one of the things that Peter is very, very strong on is story. And if you listen to him as a director, or you listen to the series that we've done, or his fine product on directing, or anything that Peter does, you will hear again and again, his commitment to the story and making sure that it's the most compelling story that locks in the audience and moves the audience. So in doing what I think, if I understand what Peter says, there's times when you think, I need 50 cars, and I've got to move this thing through here. And the question I would ask is that really relevant to the story? And if it could be told simpler to fit your budget and your crew and your expertise, then always go story first. Meaning, if it can be done with one car instead of 50, you're honing your abilities as a writer and as a director, as a filmmaker, to put your emphasis on how you can tell something and be compelling without all the extravagance.
Yeah, I think also that because we're visual storytellers, to me, making a movie is the art of visually telling a compelling story with believable characters that make us feel something, and that one of the key words for us in there is visual. And so it has to start with story, and then it has to go with performance second, because literally, I've been in a situation like this as a director. I'm sure Rex has been in either as a director, producer, or an actor, where the sun's going down. You've got a page to shoot, and it's just basically two actors against the wall shooting. One take, you've got it, you go home. It gets the story told, right? It won't be on your demo reel, that scene, okay? But the thing is, you have to tell the story. You have to tell the dialogue, the text. You've got to get the exposition out of the way. So if you start looking and say, I have an hour left, I have 8 shots, and I start doing close-up and over on one side, and then the sun goes down, and you don't have anything back on the other person, you don't have a story. You don't even have a scene anymore. So think about that. Is visually you have what you want, right? Because you're visual storytellers, but from any point of view, from whether it's an AD, a director, director of photography, it's like, how do we compress this? How do we make this work in the time we have? That's smart filmmaking.
Awesome. That's very cool. Any other questions?
I hope I answered the question there about it's in prep. It's all in prep.
Yes.
Yes, our lifeblood starts in prep on the movie, because once you get to the set, then it's the ball is rolling at that point, right? And it's hard to stop this big machine.
So part of prep is I'm just gonna make a statement. You can tell me I'm full of it or not. Part of prep is having cover sets to cover, what happens if, if it rains and we're supposed to be outdoors, where can we go inside? And shoot. So, or if something happens, a rule of thumb is if you're not shooting, and you're just sending around on a set. So, what can you do to maximize keeping the camera rolling and getting the story and the performances captured on film? Would that be fair?
The video froze. I didn't get any of your question.
Well, it was brilliant, I'm sure.
I know it was.
Absolutely, it was golden. And so, all right, here's my question or my statement. In the old days, we did strip boards. This literally, and the one-liners, and they would go in and they'd be different color, and they're long, 10-panel, pieces of cardboard essentially, and you'd have these different strips, and each strip would be shots and scenes and days and all that. And now it's done on software. But when things would come up, because you were asking about what happens, you'd be changing the things on the strip board. So if something was here, you'd move it to there, you'd move it back, and all these things would have to be changed in effect of what happens. Can you address this and how or what software they might begin to utilize nowadays that
well, the industry standard software is called Movie Magic.
Or EP.
That's industry standard all through North America, probably Europe. It's also, of course, industry standard means it's the most expensive piece of software. But it ties in with script writing, it ties in with budgeting. So it's really, if you're going to be an AD in the business and go through, say, the DGA or do your independent movies, basically you're going to be needing Movie Magic. Now there are other softwares out there that are free. Like I think there's something like Gorilla.
Gorilla's good.
I think you can get in and you can check on Uncle Google and you can just do that. It's not the software; it's the person working it, right? Like the software is just that just shows you how to do the schedule. You need to have the experience about doing it. So it's really that's the key. And each piece of software. So if you can do it on your own, just pieces of paper and do schedules and write it all out. Whatever it takes. If you have a 2-day schedule and 2 scenes, it's gonna be pretty easy. But it's all the other paperwork that has to go. So don't get caught up in the software again. There's lots of free stuff out there you can practice on. But again, it's the experience you need about what scene is going first, how long is it going to take. And that's ultimately what you need to do as a first AD.
Now, when it comes to scheduling, let's pretend for a second that everybody's going to do a 10-page script. They've got day and night shots. They've got interior and exteriors. They've got a cast of 7 to 10 people and a crew of, 8 or 10 people, if they're lucky. Let's be hypothetical. Can we come up? Are we back? Are you back?
I didn't hear anything that you were saying. It's all frozen.
Yeah, everything. I said, let's assume that everybody here has a 10-page script, cast of 7 to 10 players, crew of 8 to 10 players, day and night shots, interior and exterior, no major stunts, but if you want to throw in something, let's throw in an animal or something to make it tough. Can we come up with a kind of really general, loose approach to how they might want to schedule something like that? And I know this is completely blind and it's nothing, but we could build it so that it would be relevant, so that they could say, here's how I might want to think about scheduling my shoot.
How many days? First of all, how many days?
Let's say it's a 10-page script. Let's have. What do we want to say? What typically? I don't know. Let's assign them some days because this.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to start with how many days you have to shoot first. That's the key here.
All right, it's 10 days. Let's say they're going to shoot.
10?
Oh, I'm sorry. I said it was 10 pages. Let's say they have 3 weekends, so 6 days.
Okay. All right. So 6 days.
Is that a reasonable? Is that reasonable for you guys? I mean, we could have said 20 weekends, but
Well, why don't we just say 5 days? It just makes the math easier.
5 days. Really, the uneven number makes it easier for you?
You hear me?
I hear you. I don't. You said 5 days. That's what I heard last.
Hi. Am I back?
You're back. You're back.
Okay. So that was me staring at you.
Oh, I'll tell you what. If we can't hear you, I'll do this, and if you can't hear us, you do that. And
Okay. Well, okay. So if you're doing, very generally speaking, so if we do 10 pages in 5 days, that means you have 2 pages a day now. If you've got exteriors and interiors and day and night, so the standard thing to do for me right now, without having any knowledge of locations or anything, would be to start with your exterior day scene. Start outside exterior, and then work your way inside. Right? You've got over weekends, so you don't, and then leave your night scenes for, say, if you're doing a day scene on Saturday, do you do a night scene on a Sunday? It's about crew turnaround, so you're not going to have that because the next day people are working. So the factor we use is start outside, go to your exteriors first. They're the hardest to do. Is it snowing where you are? Is it going to be raining? Where are you? Then do your exterior locations. Let's say you have a house for, let's say 2 days is going to be in a house. And then the other days are all out. Leave the house for the end, because that's where you're going to get to at the end. That's sort of what you're looking for to get to, because you have more control. Basically, in a one location that's yours. Say it's a set or a house, for example, or apartment, whatever it is. You have less control if you're going to shoot in a park or on a street corner or in an office building. So do the harder things first, because you're going to either lose time, lose shots, get behind schedule, and where you want to make up the schedule is in, say, the house where you've got a bunch of pages and your crew's up to speed now, your actors are up to speed. You may want to cut some scenes there. Maybe you have to cut some time there. So that's what I would do as an overview. When I started doing movies, if I didn't know anything, that's what I would do. Any AD will pretty well do that. You start with your exterior locations first. You start with then you start with your outside, all your locations, whether they're like real locations, and end up on the movie in the sets or the stages, or end up in a place that's you're going to be for a while. So if you always start with that as a guide, and then go from there, because it can all be reversed, but at least you've got a process, and then from there you start thinking about, do I actually have a day and a half at a place? What am I going to do for the extra half a day? Am I going to be moving? Because if you move, say on Saturday, Sunday, so you shoot for a day and Saturday, and then a half a day Sunday, and then you have to move somewhere on Sunday. Where are you moving to? How far away is that? Because when you're moving, you're not shooting. So is there something you can do? So that also dictates where you pick locations, right? So if you've got, a Saturday, let's say you've got a half a page, let's say you've got 4 or 5 hours in a park, and then you have an apartment building, so you could maybe do the apartment building, say on Saturday morning, do the exterior park on Saturday morning, because that's outside, and then move into your location, and then you just walk away that night, and then the next day you're all in your apartment. You have to think of day-night scenarios. So, right now, we all live in a northern climate here, from Wisconsin over into British Columbia, and it's like, 5 o'clock. It's getting lighter now, but 5 o'clock it's dark. And if you are in an apartment and your scenes and you have 12 hours scheduled in your apartment, and it's all daylight, you can't shoot against the windows after 5 o'clock. So blocking your scenes right? You want to get all the daylight stuff and then pull them away from the windows, do all your reverses after, say, 5 o'clock, because then the DP can light for day inside, but you can't look out the windows. Or vice versa, if you've got day scenes and night scenes in your apartment, you know, by 5 o'clock, you have to be finished your day and then start setting up your night scenes. So, again, it's do the math. You know, what sunrise, sunset tables are really important. You know, when does the sun come up? When does it go down? What's the weather like? If it's overcast or snowy or whatever, it's going to get darker at least half an hour, maybe an hour earlier, or at least not shootable dark. So you have to divide these times up. So that's kind of a very ABC, I think, of scheduling to help you out.
That's excellent. And you want to minimize your company moves where everybody packs up and goes
Does
from
that
one
help?
location. It helped greatly, yes. But you minimize your company moves, which is to pack up your company and go to another location. Then there's cart moves, so you could go from one room to another room inside the apartment. And if you could, if you know, the rule of thumb of low budget filmmaking is if you can find a house that works for the outside of it and the surrounding, and then the inside of it works, and you don't have to go anywhere else. That's where you want to make your movie, you know, because you don't have to. You've got all that time to do whatever you want to do without having to ever really leave.
Right. I think just leading into that, I just have, I think it was on page 11 that I sent you. It says the number one secret to creating a shooting schedule is basically minimize the number of moves and camera setups. And if you keep that in mind, that's always the guy that has an AD, producers, production managers, DPs, everyone. That's really the mantra. And what I mean by that, I'll explain that, because then you can adapt that to your own films. So there's two parts to that. Minimize the number of set moves, like that's locations. So we talked about, you know, do everything in a house rather than splitting it up or whatever it is. Minimize the moves. How can you, because when you're moving, you have to pack the equipment all up. You've got to put it in a truck or push it down the street. You just think that that's shooting time that you're never going to get. That's an extra couple takes that you're not ever going to get with the actors. That's another couple shots that you're not going to get because you're moving. Yes, sometimes we always have to move. We have to understand that. But if it's you're compressed for time, can you cheat? And one of the things in the film business is like in university, if you cheat, Rex is going to give you a fail. Okay, if you cheat. All right. In life, you probably go to jail if you cheat. But in the film business, you get gold stars. Okay, because cheating is all about gold stars in the film business. So how do you cheat? If you have a hallway or an alley, you had a perfect alley that you love to shoot this half-page scene in. But when you finally found this location that you really like, this interior apartment, just around the corner there's a back alley. It's not as good, but you don't have to move anywhere. You then decide as the director, do we move and scramble and lose shots because of the look? That's your choice, right? Or do I just change the alley that doesn't look as great, but put it by the apartment building? I can save an hour. I don't have to move way over there. I can save an hour of shooting time. And those hours are gold. You need those time. So it becomes strictly a call of you as the director or the producer for creative. Is it look? And no one can tell you one way or the other, just that you need to decide on, I want the look, I'm ready to sacrifice some things, then go for it. Ultimately, the audience sees it on the screen. They don't know it took an hour to get there. They don't know the shots you dropped. They don't know all that stuff. They just see it's color corrected and sound design. They see the visuals. You know, they see the actors. They're following your story. So again, it is up to you. So the number of set, that's what we mean by the number of set moves. Try to minimize that. If you have 6 days or 5 days to shoot or 3 days, try to compress everything together. Or if you're going to move at night when you're finished, so that if you're in an apartment one day or you're in a park all day one day and then you're in an apartment the next, you finish in the park, that's your end of shooting, pack up, move to the apartment, then everybody shows up the next day and then you're there. So that's smart filmmaking. And a lot of it is just logistics. It's very simple. It's like just logic, right? Not logistics as much as logic. Well, that makes sense, all right? It's when you get this, I have a half a day. Like you do the schedule, and all of a sudden it's like, well, we're either half a day over or hey, we thought this would take a day. It's only going to take us half a day. What do you do with that other half a day? And those are the things that come up that you scratch your head and say, okay, we can do this and we can do this or whatever it is. So just watch that. So the second part to this equation is minimize the number of camera setups. And what we mean by that is you're shooting a master and you're shooting, towards this way. You want to shoot everything that way first. You want to, and then turn around and shoot everything. You don't want to go this way, and then turn the camera back again. Because then you're relighting, you're putting the camera back in the same position, and the DP is going to go, why didn't we shoot? And the AD go, why didn't we shoot this when we were here? So that's doing your shot list, right? And figuring out, and it's actually, on any movie, it's really the director of photography and the first AD that figure out the shooting order, not really the director. The director just, unless you have a specific shot or you want to start with the child first or whatever, you just want those two people, the AD and your DP, who are the timekeepers and also understand the time restraints. They're going to do it in the order that they think is going to be the fastest anyways. So you sort of block the scene and then say, well, we're going to do the master first. That's 99.99% of what everybody does. And then once you're doing the master, let's shoot. And then that's it. When I was AD, it was basically, okay, let's do this shot next. I was determining what shots we do a lot next in conjunction with the DP. Once I saw the master, once I saw the lighting, and I knew what the coverage was, I said, okay, let's go in and do this. Well, how about we do this? Then we'll turn around. We can cheat it over here. We can do this. All of that kind of stuff. So minimize moves, like moving from one location to another, and minimize the amount of setups you have. That is going to save you time and give you extra time with actors and extra shots on the set.
Now, I'm going to extrapolate out a little bit and say when they are writing, they can also use some of these principles to write their screenplays to make it easier for you to shoot your screenplays or for someone else to shoot your screenplays. I wouldn't say you want, obviously the greatest service is to your story, but you can definitely be thinking about, how or why. I mean, I don't want to go too far into this, but how
I know what you're saying.
Huh? Go ahead. Can you hear me?
I missed the question there, but I think I've got this. That look at it this way: the lower budget you have, you have to write your script to the schedule, right? So if you've got a really low budget and not an experienced crew, and you really need 4 days to shoot it, but you have 3 or 2, then you're going to have to really create the shots to the schedule so that you actually get the film made, right? And I think as the one gentleman there who talked about his elaborate shots and everything in prep, this is where that comes in. You're a director. You want to make it visually stimulating. The shots and the psychology of the camera and all of this stuff are very, very important. But when you sit there and realize you just can't do a 360 because the DP can't light it, or it's going to take 5 hours instead of 2, you have a choice to make. So in the script, when you're writing the script, either you're writing it yourself or you get the script from the writer and you start making your notes as a director, you're thinking story first, always story. How can I tell this story? But maybe it's how can I tell this story or this scene simpler than it's written? Because when I've looked at the schedule, it's not going to fit. So how do I make it work? Instead of having the person go in the room and out of the room, and can we cheat it? Can we keep them in the room? That's thinking about story, performance, what are the objectives of the scene as a director. That's when you start making notes and say, I just want to be able to keep it simpler, to keep people, say, in a room and not have to walk them out into a hallway. Here's a key that you can write down. Is it a story point? And story points are key, because when I was ADing, I would look and go, is this a story point? If this is not a story point, then what are we doing, like walking into the hallway? Why can't we take the lines of dialogue, those 4 or 5 lines of dialogue, and forget going out to the hallway and put them in another scene or something like that? Would you elaborate on what you mean by story point? Story point is something like The story point in Titanic is the Titanic hits an iceberg. That's the big story point. If you don't have I always use Titanic as an example. If someone said, well, let's not have the Titanic hit the iceberg, you say that's fine, but we can't call the movie Titanic, right? You can call it. You can have the same movie, and it's about Rose and Jack running around with a guy shooting at them on a cruise ship. That's okay, but you have to have the story point. All your films have story points, and what that is if you don't mention this point or show the prop or a line of dialogue, the audience is going to miss something. So you look at the story points. The shorter the script, 2 pages, 3 pages, 10 pages, you don't have a lot to cut out because almost everything is important. But when you get into longer form films, whether they're hour, and feature films, so much of it is exposition, right? 2 actors sitting there talking about their childhood or something. Can that scene be cut out? Can you take that dialogue and put it somewhere else? That's what we're talking about, story points. You go to your script and say, if I took this piece of dialogue out, or I took there's the red car, or whatever it is, if I took that out, the audience is going to miss something. So that's what I mean by story point.
I like this area. Again, any questions? Yes, Alex. Oh, he can't hear?
Oh, I can hear now. I can hear you now. Yeah.
Any questions?
I have one question. When you were, it's Alex again. I just had a question, like a question from your own personal experience. Did you ever have to work with a director that was I guess stubborn? Is oh, my vision never changes. I don't want to change anything. Has that ever happened on any of the sets you worked on?
Oh, never. Oh, never. Of course, yes. Yes.
The incooperative ones.
Yeah. But I'm not going to call it not cooperative. I'm going to call it maybe not experienced or just this is what I want, and that's what we're going to stay here till we get it. I mean, you have to also think what's wrong with that. That's the director's vision that's going on the screen. But you have to look at what's the budget, who's involved, how many days do you have to shoot. When you're doing things like television, when you have 7 or 8 days, your directors have to go, you have to know your shots, you have to be busy. The first AD, as a matter of fact, in television, has a certain amount more power than the director. I've been on sets when I was doing television, said, we can't shoot this, we have to move over here. And the director, okay, yeah, how do I do this? Right? Because because the director on television is a different animal. It's a producer's medium in television. The the producers are actually the writers. They're on set. They just want you to work, and the actors, they know what they want to do. So it's a different animal there, and they're going to tell you to cut, or you have to cut things out of this. You have to do it. But if you're doing your own movie, all it is why are you being stubborn because of ego? Are you being stubborn because of insecurity? Or is it just, this is what I want, and I'm going to stay here till I get it, and if we go 3 hours over time and I have to pay money or someone, so that's part of the business. But I think ultimately as a director, and you have to go, who's the producer? Is it your mother with a credit card, or is it a studio, or whatever? You just have to think, what am I going to get now? What am I going to lose later? I don't know if anybody heard that. So it's what you have to think about. What am I going to get now? Am I going to get this scene, or am I going to lose something later? So it's all about the compromise. It's the balance. And they're the boss. If I'm the AD and that's what the director does, other than television, we're not talking that now, whatever. But I think it's the due diligence that a first AD, a producer, a director of photography says, listen, if we want to do this, we're going to lose something. What can we take out? And I think it's a psychology thing, right? So, but the smart directors are the ones that are experienced. Even the ones that are inexperienced but don't have an ego, or basically we talk a lot about this, is most anybody who acts up, Rex and I have talked about this a lot, are basically insecure. And so they're in a position of power, like a director, an AD, a DP, an actor even, and they're going to act out. Why? Okay? So a lot of it is, if you're smart, you realize that you just have to make choices. I've done that as a director on television, where I understand the schedule. And there's a scene that I want to spend, let's say the AD is giving me 3 hours to work it, but I want 4 or 4.5, because I will come back and tell the AD, give me an extra hour, an hour and a half here. But see this scene here? You can take an hour out of that one. A very good friend of mine, a line producer on a bunch of movies I worked on with him, said a budget is a pie. Okay, there's your pie, there's the budget. And you can change the size of the slices, right? So that if all of a sudden you've got, this is this big slice for extras, and then one day you walk in, we want a crane, then all of a sudden the extras become smaller to make up for the crane, because the pie is not going to get any bigger. So if you take anything away from this, think of filmmaking or a budget as a pie, right? The size of the pie is not going to get any bigger. But you can determine the slices of all the slices, which is basically props, wardrobe, how many days shooting, how much, and how do you work that? How do you compromise? It is a business of compromise, but people really don't like to say that word.
It's true. Peter, we've got about 10 minutes left, just so you know. Awesome answer. Also, one of the things that I like to think about is somebody may be acting out of their insecurity. It's not really our place to go, that person's insecure and they're an ass. It's our place to say, how can I help them feel secure so we can get moving, and keep going. Yeah. Can you hear now?
I can hear now.
All right.
Can hear what you said.
I simply said that it's our opportunity to help someone feel more secure. So if you're dealing with an insecure director and you've got more experience, rather than labeling them insecure and thinking that they're a less than glorious person, figure out how you can help them be more secure in what they're doing.
Well, yeah. To use director terms, we do it in ADs. Well, what if? Why don't we try this? I understand. Let's help. Let's make it a teamwork. What you hire as a director is you want a team around you, that DPs and ADs and producers and production managers that can help you out and bring you ideas. We're behind schedule. How can we solve this? It's no good just walking up and say to you, Alex, okay, I'll use Alex because that's the only name I know. Alex, you're an hour behind schedule. Like, do something. Well, okay, you already know you're an hour behind schedule. The do something is irrelevant. Help me out. What can we do to help this? So my experience as an AD or your director of photography, well, why don't we try this? You know what? Instead of taking the actors and moving them here, let's reblock the scene so that we're only shooting this way instead of having them going. These are the kind of things I'm talking about.
I have a question, comment, and that is, I would like you to kind of mention the divisions of labor. In other words, the director of photography has a particular job. They work with the first AD. They come up with a shot list. The director may or may not be included in that as much. They're working with what their expertises are. Because at this level of filmmaking, a lot of people are wearing every hat. They're trying to do everything, and yet in the unionized world, people do things differently. And it's important to get experience, but it's also important if you're working with a cinematographer on your shoot to be able to let the cinematographer do what the cinematographer's supposed to do. Now, okay. Having said that, let me know when you get sound. Having said that, I'm gonna have Peter come back on and say, I'll hang in there.
Okay.
Now you're back. Okay, see, this is being recorded anyway, so if we can't hear each other, I will repeat it when you come back. Now you're gone. All right. All right. So one thing I asked you to do is to describe the division of labor, but then when you shake your head, does that mean you can't hear? All right.
You might want to try ending the call and picking it back
back up again.
Yeah, I might, but
Okay,
we
all right,
we
okay,
don't have that
you're
much.
back now.
That's a good idea earlier. So, lastly, I'm going to say it. We'll come back to Peter. Sometimes your DP can take an inordinate amount of time working with the gaffer to light a scene because they want it perfect too. And they can chew up your time. So you need to have a DP that you can control as well. You know, this is this kind of collaborative experience. You're hearing?
Yeah.
All right.
I think I'll just jump in here.
Please.
I think that what you're talking about is your crew. Everybody wants the show to look good. So the props master, whoever's doing props, wants the best props. The costume wants the best costume. Your DP wants the best lighting and they all get credits on your show. Don't forget, whether you're working for lunch or for lunch and for money or whatever, everybody wants it to look good, and nobody sets out to do a bad movie. So you have to work, and it's about the working within it, so that the AD director photography relationship is really a big one, because the AD and the DP have to work together in order to figure out all the timing. Because ultimately, as an AD, I can sit there and go, this can take 3 hours, right? Okay, where did that number come from? That comes from experience, but it also comes from, I could be out by 2 hours. Maybe it takes 2, maybe it takes 6. The DP has to be part of that big equation. Everything we're talking about actually all comes back to the director of photography. Because as a director and as an AD, after the scene is blocked and the marks are on the ground and they start lighting, we just stand back. And now the majority of time on any movie set is lighting, is waiting. And so, who's your director of photography? How long are they going to spend an hour and a half lighting or 40 minutes lighting, right? So one of your key positions, and they're all key, but the key position on the movie set is who's your DP? How fast are they? Are they working on the same page? Or are they just, it's all about lighting and it's not about story. You know, I want it to look the best. Well, then you may have a problem, because how are they going to work with their team, their group, and their gaffer, right? So I think that that's very important as a director, to be able to have those people around you, and as well, like production designer, art director, like building sets, painting sets, dressing sets. You know, where's the money coming from? How much do we actually need? You have to keep in mind, again, like I just said, everybody wants to do 100% for you, but is the budget enabling to do that? So can they make something that's 50% look like 100%? And a lot of times in the movie business, the answer is yes. You just have to have experience in order to do that.
And a piece to all of this is also, being a timekeeper, is knowing and being able to talk to people and say, how much time do you think this is going to take? And then they can say, well, it takes 35 minutes. And you go, okay, you know, we can do that. And then I would about halfway through go, are we on time? So at about 17 minutes, I'd be saying, are we still on time? And if they said I need another 50 minutes or no, we'll be done in 5. I mean, that way you know where you are in it, and not everybody just sitting around twiddling their thumbs.
Here's another thing, because it's their estimates. It's an expression I have. It says, keep film going through the camera. Okay, now you're not shooting film, but digital, but shoot something. Or what can you do while we're waiting if something happens, right? So the idea is, what can you shoot first? If all of a sudden the DP estimated 45 minutes of lighting and it's going to take an hour and a half, this happens every single day around the world. It's just technical stuff then can you go and say, let's go visit another location, let's just go outside and let's line up our next shot, or block the actors. Do something as a director to keep ahead of yourself. You know, and that could just be going with the actors and rehearsing the next scene and the next set, if it's just around the corner, something, whatever it is, just to keep on top. If you just sit and you're not doing anything, then what happens next? Or you're going to sit there and start cutting shots. You have to keep thinking ahead all the time, right? All the time.
Fantastic. Peter, we're out of time. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it's been really very valuable information that you have always provided, that you provided this morning. I would love to have you back again if we can. But in the meantime, class, Any comments or anything you want to say to Peter before he goes? Has this been useful to you?
Very useful.
Very useful. All right, we
Yeah,
got.
and I think the paper I gave you is more nuts and bolts. You know, I think even not talking about that was good because you've got something to work with there. And I know Rex has got enough experience to help you out, at least to fill in some blanks. So I wish everybody the best of luck. Yes, Rex, definitely. Always love to talk to you. Okay,
And we'll be back. I got my website back up. The Rex Sikes Movie Beat
good stuff.
site that's been hostage is now back. So we'll be continuing.
All right,
Awesome, my friend. Take care. Have a great day. Say hi to Trilby and
I will do that.
all the best. All right.
Take care, everyone. Good luck.
Bye now.
Bye bye.
Awesome.